Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Breckland Planning for today. Let me first start by just going through what we call our general housekeeping. Fire exits. There are two fire exits quite clearly marked on my left-hand side. There is another fire exit down by the lavatories and also the door that you came in by. There are no tests given for today, so if we hear the bell, we will treat it as genuine and vacate the building and congregate in the car park. Phones and mobile devices, could I ask you to switch your various items to silent or switch off, whichever is easier for you. If you decide that your daily life with your phone is more important than my meeting and it goes off and disturbs my meeting, it's a fine to the chairman's charity of this council, and it's not me as the chairman of this committee, it's the chairman of the council, which is Councillor Peter Wilkinson, who's here to collect your money today when your phone disturbs me. And I have got his chosen charities, I hope I'm right. His charities for this year are Swarthmore Litcham Hospice and also Sands Baby Bereavement Society. So your money will go to a very good cause, but I prefer you not to. Okay, procedure. What will happen is, as each item is called, I've got a list of people who wish to speak. Come and sit on the right-hand side. The officers will give the presentation, and then I will ask you to stick to your allotted times. When I've had enough of you speaking or you've reached your time, I will ring the bell, which means please be quiet, or at least sum up and finish. And then it's open to questions from members, at which point after that we'll take the vote. Let me introduce my team for today. On my left-hand side I have Mike Horn, and further down the road we have Andy Darcy, who's here to do some policy issues today. My right-hand side, my right-hand lady is Rebecca Collins. We also have Naomi Minto and Barbara Greengrass sitting at the back here. Becky Harris, who's the invisible woman at the moment, but she is in the building. She's our usher for the day. And also Julie Britton, who's here, who is from Democratic Services, who've taken the minutes and keeping us all in check. Okay, terrific. So if we could start, could I have you to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting on the 4th of July? Are you all agreed that I sign those off?
Excuse me, Chairman.
Oh, far away.
Thank you, Chairman. Officers had requested, and in the officer report with the Banham application on the schedule of applications, item A, that the exact wording of planning conditions be delegated to officers, and that isn't reflected in the minutes, so we were hoping to update them in that regard.
Members all in agreement with that? Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Okay, next item. Julie, please, apologies and substitutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two apologies from Councillor Roger Attewell and Councillor Mark Kiddle-Morris. And in attendance as substitutes, I have Councillor Keith Gilbert and Councillor Samantha Taylor.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Gilbert, for standing in today. Very much appreciated. Item 3, declarations of interests and representations that have been received. I will take them as each item is raised. Chairman's announcements, item 4. I haven't got anything much to add, so I think it's about time. It's that time of the year that I tell you it's 147 days to Christmas. That's all I've got to tell you. Nothing else today. Item 5, request to defer applications included in the agenda? No. Item 6, urgent business? No. Okay, we're racing through today. So we now go to item 7, which is a local plan update, and Andy Darcy is going to handle this for us. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Chairman. Very briefly, in terms of the local plan update, the partial update of the local plan that refers to policy INF 03. We're still awaiting the final inspector's report, but once that has been received, and it is apparently due, once that has been agreed, there will be a report taken to full council that will formally change the local plan in respect of that policy. Moving on to the full update, we are currently logging and assessing the 500 or so sites received under the call for sites, both for development and for designation as local green space. And we are also logging and looking at the 2,000 or so responses that we had to the issues and options consultation that finished in May. We've commissioned a range of evidence base as part of the full update of the local plan, covering issues around housing needs, gypsy and traveller accommodation, strategic flood risk assessment and water cycle study and integrated assessment. The design guide is coming on well, and that's almost reaching a draft stage, and that will go out for consultation probably in the autumn. And we are also arranging a suite of both member and community engagement meetings and events in the late summer and the autumn, and that will start with the first meeting, which will be after the next planning committee for all members of the district council on August the 29th. Invitations to follow soon. Thank you, Chairman.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Bambridge.
As you may be aware, I have an interest in this whole issue regarding a particular site, and there are, I think, now some 40+ villagers who are looking forward to having a meeting where they can take part, and they are asking me to ask whether we can we can set a date fairly early on so that they can plan to come to that meeting. So I would appreciate it if you would be able to do that.
Yes, we're just finalising the dates for all of the community engagements, which will be district council members, parish and town council members, and then events open to the wider community. And some of those, for example, will be held in the marketplace of the closest town or whatever. So there will be an opportunity for both town and parish councils, as well as the wider general community, to come and have their say.
Thank you.
Dates will follow as soon as we can get them agreed. Yeah.
Councillor Clark, please.
That's better. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Andy, that's very helpful. There are two parts of my question. One, you talked about the assessment of the 500 sites that have come forward, and also consideration around green spaces. Will any discussion about the green spaces, is that going to be part of the engagement process? But also, are you going to be formally discussing issues around green spaces with individual parish or town councils, as well as obviously relevant district councillors? One of my concerns, I know I had a reply at the last full council from Councillor Hewitt that in terms of green spaces there was not capacity to look at issues en bloc. So, for example, I declare an interest in the 9 potential green sites in my area, which are under consideration as part of Breckland Bridge. So if you can perhaps outline the approach you may be taking in terms of planning and where that fits in with Breckland Bridge. Thank you.
Thank you. The local plan will seek to take an agreed standard approach, uniform approach across the district as to what is suitable as a local green space and what isn't, and that will be based on the guidance set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. There will be opportunity for consultation and discussion around whether or not to designate a local green space, and the reasons either why it isn't or why it is will be up for discussion. And obviously any future draft plan because obviously there are various stages of consultation yet to happen, both on the first draft plan and on the second draft plan and on the examination. So there will be ample opportunity, I would say, to have discussions and consultations around whether or not a site is suitable.
Thank you. Councillor Kybird, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure how many members of the committee went to attended the design guide workshops, but the consultation is open until the 4th of this month.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're moving on to item 8, which is the Brownfield Land Register update. Over to you again, Andy, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This report is the, as the Chairman has said, is the update of the Council's Brownfield Land Register. Local authorities are required to prepare and maintain a register of previously developed and brownfield sites within the district as defined under the National Planning Policy Framework. The register forms two parts. Part 1 of the register, which is brownfield land within the district that is capable of delivering at least 5 dwellings, and a site that is suitable in policy terms, available and achievable, and the report sets out what those tests mean. The report has now been updated to remove sites from the previous register which have now perhaps come forward and are under construction and therefore are no longer needed to be on the register because planning has been granted, and to assess any new sites which have been proposed to the council for inclusion on the register. This year there is one such site that has been proposed. That is a site at Mattershall, and the appendix to the report, Appendix C, gives an assessment of that site which is not recommended as being suitable for inclusion on the register in view that its development would be contrary to the current policies of the local plan. But it does make a suggestion that as Mattershall are updating their neighbourhood plan, the promoters may wish to engage with them in respect of that plan. So the register is before you in the appendices, Chairman, and the recommendation is that the report is agreed and noted. Thank you.
Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for that, Andy. Yes, I'm familiar, like others on the committee, with the brownfield sites, design and register. What I was looking for in the report, and it may be that it's lurking in there, what I would like to know, possibly at a future meeting or through the planning process, is if all those brownfield sites came on stream, an assessment of how far, what sort of total of housing that would actually bring us approximations. We know that there's pressure nationally on building on brownfield sites. Obviously, each individual site has got its own constraints and opportunities, but it will be nice to know at some point how far that's going to make a contribution, to the challenges we've got locally. Thank you.
I can look at the answer for that and perhaps report it back to the next meeting of this committee.
Thank you. No further questions. Okay, thank you very much. Item 9 on the agenda is... Sorry, yeah. Oh, okay, fine. We need to have that recommendation apparently agreed. So, I haven't got that down. So, could I have a show of hands to agree the recommendation? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm using small sheet at the moment. Item 9 is the 5-year housing land supply. Again, Andy Darcy, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, this is the annual statement update of the Council's 5-year housing land supply report. Again, it's a requirement under the National Planning Policy Framework to prepare such a statement on an annual basis, and the full assessment is set out in the appendix to the report. The purpose of the statement is a means to demonstrate that the council is meeting its housing development needs, and which is a key part of the national planning policy framework to significantly increase the supply of housing. The report has two components. The first is to calculate what the requirement is for the council, and essentially that is the annual figure of 612 dwellings per year, and to that we add the shortfall, if there is a shortfall, that has been in terms of delivery since the local plan period started back in 2011. The shortfall currently stands at 295, which is a significant improvement, especially in the second part of the plan period, whereas, for example, in 2015, the shortfall stood at over 880 dwellings. So to that, we add a 5% buffer, again in accordance with the National Planning Policy Framework, and that gives us an annual requirement of 705 dwellings per year. So then we have to assess that against the sites that we consider will come forward over the next 5 years, and that comprises of major sites, sites of 10 or more dwellings, and minor sites, i.e. sites of less than 10 dwellings, an allowance for windfall sites, which are sites which are not allocated in a local plan or a neighbourhood plan, and any other sites that we may consider are suitable for coming forward. Members will note that for the first time this year we are including permanent caravan pitches because they do form an important contribution to the housing needs of the district. So they have retrospectively been included in the supply figure. The council still is positively supporting suitable planning applications, and we have over 11,400 dwellings on major sites and 610 dwellings on minor sites with planning permission. Following a recent appeal decision, we are no longer including any allowance from major outline sites where there is no clear evidence that delivery will come forward. Again, the MPPF is clear that you can include an allowance from a site where there is clear evidence. Reserve matters and full permissions are different insofar as they have obviously progressed to that next key stage just prior to implementation. The final point on that really regards nutrient neutrality. The report does make reference to nutrient neutrality. There is limited major sites within the 5-year land supply that would be potentially affected by that ongoing issue, primarily at Dereham. But even if we didn't make an allowance, it would still leave the council in a strong position in terms of a 5-year housing land supply. And it's also important to remember that these are delivery over a 5-year period, and as work is positively progressing on the nutrient neutrality issue, it would be unreasonable, I think, of us to be able to rule out development across the whole of the 5-year period, just to maybe push it back a little bit. So when we do all the maths on what we consider will be delivered from major minor sites and local plan allocations that are coming forward and windfall sites, that gives us a 5-year land supply of 6.6 years, which is a very healthy and strong position for the council. Thank you.
Questions from members at all? Councillor Kybird, please.
I think one of those caravan sites was the subject of enforcement action. Has that now been resolved?
I'm not sure. I'll look into it for you. Do you know which? Okay. I'll look into it for you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No. Thank you very much. Okay, the recommendation on this on this five-year housing land supply item is that members note the content of this five-year housing land supply statement and agree that it represents the current position of the council, and also that members agree the use of the report in the development management decision making. Could I have a show of hands that you agree with that, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Item 10, deferred applications. We will come to those as we go through our agenda. And we move to item 11, which is the schedule, because we have two members who are here, so we are slightly jumping the order. And we're going to start with 11B at Dereham, which is 3PL 2022-1050D. Thank you, Andy, by the way, as you leave the room. Thank you very much. And I have got Tony Needham, who's the clerk of Dereham Town Council, Paul LeGrice, who's the agent, and also Councillor Alison Webb, who's the ward representative. You take your seats, and as soon as you're comfy, I'll hand over to Rebecca Collins, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is reserved matters approval for residential development of 216 dwellings at land off Swanton Road in Dereham, following obviously the granting of outline planning permission, which considered access at the outline stage. All other matters of landscaping, scale, layout and appearance are to be considered as part of this reserved matters application. Members will note that the application also seeks to discharge a number of conditions listed in the report and on the screen in front of you. And also from your report, it also seeks to discharge the affordable housing scheme, which is set out in the Section 106 agreement that accompanies the outline planning application. So moving on to the planning application, this is the red line boundary shown at outline application stage. You can see that the development is split into two sections either side of Swanton Road, and when you see the detailed layout at outline application stage, it was agreed that there would be a roundabout to slow down traffic into the development and provide access to development on both sides of Swanton Road. So here's the aerial photography showing the application site. You can see it's fairly sparse in terms of vegetation and landscaping. There is some landscaping to the external boundaries of the site, particularly along the railway line edge, which is just to the west of the application site. But otherwise, it's a large open field previously used for agriculture. Just for members' reference, when approved at outline application stage, the site is actually allocated in our local plan, and obviously this allocation and the approval of the outline planning permission establishes the principle for development in this location, which cannot be revisited at this stage. So at outline application stage, as normal, we did have an indicative site plan showing how the site could be laid out and could accommodate 216 dwellings. You'll note that it was always proposed that there would be a large swathe of green open space towards the south of the site connecting into Dereham, and that there will be that roundabout beyond that green space to connect either side of the road and slow down traffic coming along Swanton Road. And that matter of the roundabout is not for consideration today because access was agreed at outline application stage. And then you'll see there were some green sections of open space across the site. This is the site plan that is submitted with the application. You can see that the principles have been taken over onto the proposal for the reserved matters application. You'll note that that larger green swathe of open space at the entrance of the site, this is discussed in the officer report and I'll discuss more in a minute, but this provides a more usable area of open space at the entrance of the site and also provides a better buffer with the railway line and the properties that exist there on the western boundary. You'll also note on the southern section of the site the attenuation pond. It is a SUDS attenuation that's suitable for a 1 in a 100-year event plus 40% climate change. You'll note the two circular routes around the site that provide access through the site. The Highways Authority have obviously assessed the layout of the site and raised no objections to the proposals in terms of those circular routes or the roads in between, subject to some amendments that were requested from the applicants that they now have made. Again, I repeat, members, you're only considering the layout of the site and the highways arrangements within it. Access and off-site highways works were considered at outline application stage. I've just done, it was quite a zoomed out layout. So apologies for the sections, but there's just some more detailed sections here showing the northern section of the site, primarily the housing development. You'll note from the officer report that we consider this to be acceptable layout of housing development, and obviously I've got some house types to show you in a moment. You'll note from the officer report that the materials are primarily red brick. There are some accented properties that are white render on the corners, and there is also some timber cladding used throughout the development to make that acceptable in materials terms. You'll also note from the officer report that we have no concerns with regards to amenity. There are acceptable back-to-back distances between properties. Properties have gardens, adequate parking spaces, and they meet the housing space standards in terms of size within. They do exceed those housing space standards. And also members will note from the officer report that there is sufficient car parking in accordance with our adopted car parking standards to serve those dwellings. So this is just the northern section of the site, just showing that circular layout coming off the roundabout into the site and the layout of properties. And you'll see that the majority of properties where there are open spaces front onto them. Also, we've done some work with the applicants to ensure that where properties are on corners or side face green spaces, that they're dual elevation, so they're properly surveyed. And you'll note from the officer report that the police have no concerns with regards to the layout of the site. So this is just looking at the southern section, southeastern section of the site, so a more zoomed in version of the layout for you there, just showing the access of the roundabout into that southern section, that southern loop. And again, we're really happy with the layout in terms of amenity, character and design. And obviously I'll show you some house types in a minute. Just mentioned briefly about the open space previously. The applicants have had a number of meetings with the Town Council about the open space provision. The Town Council did raise some concerns about some of the smaller areas of open space and whether they'd be available for play space. And in discussions between the applicants and the Town Council, the applicants have agreed to provide a mugger in addition to the requirements of the Section 106 agreement to make up for some of those smaller areas of open space. However, you'll note from the officer's comments that there is sufficient open space to meet the requirements of the Section 106 without the mugger, but that has been agreed between the applicant and the Town Council, and it's shown in grey just on the plan in front of you. And I did mention I have the power. It's shown in grey on the screen in front of you. And I did mention that larger expanse of open space at the entrance to the site, being able to accommodate those additional proposals and why it's been expanded in that location. It also provides a nice green entrance to the site, and it is in a more central location for all people in Durham to use that area of open space. As set out in the Section 106 agreement, there is 2 leaps. There are these orange spaces, so they're required, and there is laps as well that are these greyer squares, also required by the Section 106. So there is a good expanse of play across the 216 dwellings across the site, and on that basis, the Town Council are happy with the proposals in terms of open space. We've just got a sample of some of the house types that are representative across the development, not all the house types, but we've got a 3-bed dwelling here just showing you the elevations. And if you look on the side elevation, this is a really good example of where this one sits on a corner. So we've got a large window that serves a habitable room, being the living room on the ground floor, so that you've got surveillance on corners and of open spaces. And I'll just scan through these. So this is another semi-detached with some of the timber cladding, just to show you. And one of the 4-bed house types, detached. And another 4-bed house type, more of an L-shaped type. It's not moving. And then this is one of the 3-bed, 1.5-storey dwellings that exist on the site. Also, the applicant has provided some street scene layout diagrams for you, so you can get an idea of what the street scenes might look like. This is at the entrances to the site, and here you can see some of those rendered timber panel that gives that accent as you enter into the site. But you can see the majority of house types sit comfortably next to each other at being at 2-storey, and a well space served by car parking generally in between dwellings or to the frontage. Again, some more street scene elevations for you just to show across the site some of the wider streets how the development will look. And one more for you. So just moving on to some of the points of the application of interest. So I mentioned at the beginning that the application is to discharge clause B of the Section 106 agreement, which is attached to the outline planning permission. This requires an affordable housing scheme to be submitted as part of the development. Members will note from the officer report that the proposal includes 54 affordable dwellings, which is 25% in accordance with our adopted policy, and that was secured by the Section 106 agreement at the outline stage, and it is the applicant's intention to deliver those 54 affordable units. And at paragraph 2.4 we set out the housing mix, which we've consulted our housing colleagues on, and they're happy with the affordable housing mix locations in terms of the 5 parcels that are set out across the site, and also in terms of the affordable housing scheme. So we are recommending, as part of the recommendation, that we discharge that clause of the Section 106 agreement also. I've already mentioned that the principle of development was established by the granting of the outline consent and it being an allocated site. I've talked about the dwellings and residential amenity. Members will note that the tree officer, although is in general support of the landscaping, he did raise concern that a lot of the open spaces to the boundaries of the sites, but I have previously explained that is to create a more usable amount of open space and to provide open space across the site. And also, as shown on the previous indicative plan, this was what we considered indicatively at outline stage. And it also provides a green infrastructure connection between the Netherwood Moor and the Mid-Norfolk Railway line, which is also an important link. So on that basis, we consider the layout of the open space to be acceptable in this instance. So members will note from the officer report that there are concerns raised by the Town Council, and there are 6 letters of representation also raising similar concerns about the highway impact in terms of the traffic generated and the impact on the local surrounding road network, and primarily to do with the railway crossing and it only having a footpath on one side of the railway crossing bridge when the development comes forward. Members, you're unable to consider the works, the off-site highways works at this stage of the application or access to the site. These matters were all considered at outline application stage and they were conditioned appropriately as set out in your report. I have, however, included the plan, which includes the railway crossing, just to show you what was agreed. However, this plan is conditioned within condition 18 of the outline permission as being acceptable, and it was the Highways Authority that agreed that a footpath only on one side of the road was an acceptable means of dealing with the pedestrian usage of the surrounding area. And that was because at the time the how do you say their name? Midland Railway. Mid-Norfolk Rail, thank you everyone, not Midland, it's the wrong area of the country. The Mid-Norfolk Railway, with the previous applicants at outline application, tried to hold part of the land either side of the crossing as a ransom strip. And therefore, unfortunately, that meant that there is insufficient land to have the footway on both sides of the road. We did discuss it in detail at outline application stage with the Highways Authority, and the Highways Authority themselves agreed that there wouldn't be a severe highway impact from only having a footway on one side of the road. I'm explaining to you this now, members, because the 6 representations we've received and the comments from the Town Council are with regards to this matter. However, I'd like to repeat, you cannot consider this matter at reserved matter stage. You can only consider the reserve matters, which are landscape, layout, appearance and scale, access and off-site highways works were all agreed at outline stage. But just so you're full aware of what has been agreed, that's the plan that's agreed as per the condition. And then I've just got some site photos for you. So this is the railway crossing over the railway bridge on Swanton Road, just to show you as it exists currently, obviously, without the works being completed. This is the currently dirt access to the site off Swanton Road. Obviously, the roundabout will improve the access arrangements from that. That won't be the access to the houses. And this is the northern section of the site, just looking back towards Dereham, and we are panning round the northern section of the site, looking at Swanton Road there, and we'll pan round onto that south-eastern section. And here you can see, again, that primarily the landscaping and vegetation is to the boundaries of the site, and otherwise it's a very large, clear, open site. And we're just panning back towards the railway bridge and the properties which exist within Dereham. And again, panning back round in that direction. You'll note, as the officer report goes on, that there are a number of conditions that are being sought to discharged through the application process. These have been addressed individually within the officer report. However, the application does seek to discharge conditions 8 and 9 relating to surface water flood risk. The LLFA have been consulted and subject to some amendments and discussions with the applicants. The subsystem is considered acceptable and the LLFA have no objections to the discharge of those conditions. And Anglian Water have confirmed that the foul water drainage strategy is also acceptable. Our ecologists have also been consulted with regards to the layout of the development and also the discharge of condition 11, which relates to ecology. Our ecologists had no objections subject to the inclusion of an additional back box, which has been shown on the amended plans. And also you will note from the ecology section of the report that we will require a unilateral undertaking for payment towards GI RAMs, which will support those off-site sites of importance for ecology. And also, members, you'll note from the officer report that we're seeking to delegate the matter of nutrient neutrality subject to the application being acceptable today. The application is also seeking to discharge conditions 5 and 6 relating to contamination, and our contamination officer considers that these conditions are acceptable to be discharged. Condition 26, which relates to archaeology, the Historic Environment Service have come back and say Part A of that condition is acceptable to be discharged. And you'll note from the list of conditions at the end that we've set that out very clearly. And I've already mentioned about the acceptability of the affordable housing scheme for the Section 106 agreement. So on the basis that the principle of development for the erection of dwellings has been established by the granting of the outline planning permission, considering only the reserved matters of appearance, layout, landscaping and scale, and the proposals for the discharge of conditions and the Section 106, we have recommended this application for approval, subject to the conditions listed in the report, assigned unilateral undertaking for GI RAMs, and delegation of the matter of nutrient neutrality to resolve through appropriate assessment undertaken by officers in consultation with Natural England. Thank you very much.
Was it an issue, Councillor Banbridge, or?
Yes, it was.
Far away.
Right, yeah, and I appreciate, Rebecca, that you did say this, underline it and underline it again about the footpath, but I
Sorry, I meant about procedure because I have to ask, we've got questions first. I thought you meant, did you want to do it now or would you wait till after questions?
Well, I think because it's fresh now, and I appreciate what you said, that we couldn't consider the footpath, but I think I wasn't here when the original application was heard, so I have no opportunity to hear what was said then. But I had written this down as being a serious concern. We have opened a situation where the people who live in the southern section, the larger section of the development, will have to cross the Swanton Road at least twice on their walk into the town. And I'm wondering whether, if we're not putting a footpath both sides over the railway crossing, whether we are providing, or with County Council providing, 2 crossing places over that road. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll come back to you on that. I'd rather have the speakers first because that might be raised within that item. Sorry, Councillor Webb, would you like to go first or last? Of course you can. We'll start with Tony Needham, please, who's the clerk of the Dereham Town Council. 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I've just got two points to make, which actually rarely I'm not being critical of the applicant, because actually the applicant has picked up the outline application and has done what was required in that. The level crossing, when the outline came to this committee, there was a plan showing a shared use cycle route on one side and a footpath on the other side of the level crossing and a cycle link going into town. That was the plan this committee saw and this committee approved. Then at some point between being at the committee and signing the 106 agreement, the plan was changed, and I think Rebecca has expanded on that, why that was changed. But the revised plan never came back to this committee, was never consulted on. The plan was just changed as an officer delegation, and we never saw it. We were all then surprised when the reserve matters came forward, and it didn't show the 2-footway or cycleway and footway. So I think we've got a sort of situation where, as it occurs now, Mid-Norfolk Railway want a wider crossing, the Town Council wants a wider crossing, the public want a wider crossing, and this committee, when it saw the outline application, approved a wider crossing with a cycleway and a footway, but nobody is getting that. So I think there's just a question there, really, is what's happened? Why did we see this at outline, and how did it disappear when the 106 agreement was signed? Again, that's not criticising the applicant. The applicant bought the site with the outline application. The other point I'd like to raise is around outdoor playing space. And again, it's just a comment, and it's not criticising the applicant. This is the third application, say recently, in the last few years, where I've come along at outline and said, that doesn't look like the correct amount of outdoor playing space. And lo and behold, when reserve matters comes around, there isn't the right amount of outdoor playing space. And we're told, no, we can't talk about quantity of outdoor playing space because that was all done at outline application. Luckily, Able Homes have been very constructive and very positive, come and met with us on several occasions. We've talked about the shortfall and how that might be mitigated. However, that still, and I think that still doesn't sort of help in future applications, and I think myself and the town councillors are sort of really struggling to understand how we're not getting the correct amount of outdoor playing space in these applications at the outline stage. And I think some of it is around the language, because the officer was talking about open space, and there's different types of open space. The policy requires outdoor playing space, which is a specific type of open space, not general open space, not general any bit of green area. It's children's play space and areas for sport. That's what the policy requires, and that's the language we should be using rather than talking about open space provision. It's outdoor playing space is what we should be talking about. Spot on.
I meant you could sum up, not, I think I've probably come over quite angry at the beginning then. No, that's okay. Before I move on, I just want Rebecca to come in with some corrections.
So the summary there with regards to what was shown to members at the committee is factually incorrect. The plan that members have seen today was shown to members of the planning committee on the 13th of January 2020. They were also shown the previous plan that showed a crossing on each side, and they were explained at that committee the reasons why the Highways Authority had agreed and found it acceptable for having crossing only on one side. And in the committee report for the 13th of January 2020, those relevant plans were listed in the conditions, so members made their recommendation at that planning committee on the basis of those plans that were shown to them. Thank you.
Okay. My solicitor's asked as to why you were under the impression that the wrong plans were shown.
Sorry, I may be incorrect, but I've just sort of gone back through all the documents that I could get, looked at dates on documents, and tracked it back, and that was the conclusion I draw. There may be something produced at the committee that I don't recall, but that isn't on the website, so I may be incorrect.
Okay, I didn't know how deep we were debating whether it was liar, pants on fire or not. Okay, I've got Mr. LeGrice, please, who's the agent. You wishing to speak? Yeah, 3 minutes in, sir.
Thank you. For those who don't know me, I'm Paul LeGrice, Managing Director of Able Homes. I'm here this morning to speak in support of your officer's recommendation of approval for our Reserve Matters application at Swanton Road in Dereham. I don't propose to cover all of the points that the planning officer has already made, other than to reaffirm that the principle of development and matters associated with access and off-site highways works were determined as part of the outline planning application, which was undertaken by a promoter, and we subsequently then purchased the land. Throughout the process of seeking the Reserve Matters approval, we've engaged with the Town Council, planning officers, the Highway Authority, the LLFA, and Norfolk Constabulary's Architectural Liaison Officer to incorporate their comments into our detailed design. There are no statutory objections to our proposed scheme, and matters raised as part of the consideration of our application have been promptly dealt with to enable the recommendation of approval as proposed. Our scheme is looking to bring forward 216 energy-efficient new homes. We build to an EPC A rating, incorporating PV panels, triple glazing, air source heat pumps and electric car charging points as standard to every home, together with delivering a policy-compliant level of affordable homes. I'm happy to answer any questions which the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Webb, please, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Right, today I'm going to talk to you about broken promises. Promises that back in 2015, when I went to a public exhibition, proposals for this development were put forward. Everybody was really worried in Dereham about it. At the time, and even worse now, there was not enough doctors, dentists, schools, infrastructure to support this extra development. However, we were reassured that there's going to be proposals put in place to make sure that the development is safe and good for our residents to go backwards and forwards, and for the new inhabitants of the new estate to actually cross the railway line. The problem is that all these planning decisions, or most of them, are not made holistically. They're made very much in their little bubble, which is how things work. But I think it needs to be a wider look at how it means for places like Dereham. The application was agreed at the time. There was a shortfall at the time in the 5-year land supply, housing land supply. And even though it was a greenfield site and outside the defined settlement boundary, the emergent site options report also stated that the site was undevelopable on highways grounds, but the applicant had put forward proposals in the planning statement dated December 2015 to overcome the issue, which were accepted roughly by residents at the time. They promised things like the significant improvements to the level crossing over the Mid-Norfolk Railway heritage line on the Swanton Road. An agreed improvement scheme will replace existing manually operated gates with an automated crossing, providing significant benefits to the operation of the railway, providing 1.8 metre wide footways to both sides of the road, ensuring safe pedestrian access over the line, and an increase to the carriageway width from 5.2 to 6 metres, improving the safety of this location. So I'm a bit lost what happened, because I know there was an issue with the Mid-Norfolk Railway saying they wanted to hold on to that land. But surely, we should be putting our residents' safety at first before developments. We must make sure that none of the children who will be walking to school, which is very near, will be walking across the road, crossing the road and then crossing back again on a busy road, because there's a lot more houses built there. This is really important, that none of us want to see a child killed there. I just feel that as this access point was so critical to this development, I'm asking for you to consider that the condition is brought back to full planning committee. I know the planning officers have said that this can't be done, but it was critical to the development actually starting. So I finished on that. The other thing that I have got a point to make about is there's no bungalows in the site plan. And I don't know why, because we do have an older population, we do need bungalows. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. You owe me 8 seconds somewhere. You overran. Okay. Because I didn't want to upset you. Okay, thank you very much. It's open to questions from members. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just got one question for the officer, and then a question for one of the objectors. Question for Rebecca. The application, obviously, it's been agreed at outline is for up to 216 houses. Is that definitely an upper ceiling? That's my first question.
Well, the application in front of you is only for 216 dwellings. If you I just need to flip to what it actually says. Residential. Yeah, so if they wanted to increase the density, they'd have to seek to change the outline, which is not what they're doing. They want to develop 216 in the reserve matters.
And I've got a question for the Dereham Town Clerk. I note in the comments of the objections of the Town Council, you referred to a 20-mile-an-hour limit on the frontage. Could you perhaps expand on that, the need for that and so forth? I haven't seen any reference in the officer's report, but I just want to follow that up, thinking about safety.
Yeah, that was just an item that brought up, and I've got a feeling, and Paul may remember better than me, but I don't think there was any kind of major objections. I think it was just highways just didn't want it. I don't know.
No further questions. Just a comment, Chairman, just to say that I can only echo the remarks made by Councillor Webb. I'm concerned about not the rights and wrongs of who owns which bit of land on the crossing. It's quite obvious there are going to be one of the things that always concerns planning members is not being able to look at the cumulative effect in the Dereham area, which we've got. All of those roads which feed into Dereham. And in terms of public safety, I think it was only yesterday in that vicinity of Cemetery Road, Swanton Road, there was an accident to a cyclist with life-threatening injuries, and those are things which concern me. May unfortunately stay my hand on this occasion. So I want that to be recorded. It's very well to be wise after the event, but I wouldn't want to be wise after any increase in accidents. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca, please.
Hi, I'm completely hearing Councillor Clark and Councillor Bambridge about your concerns with the application site, but what you need to remind yourself is you cannot consider the highways impacts, the access, or the off-site highways works with this current application. You can only consider the reserve matters. The application was heard at Planning Committee, it was approved at Planning Committee, the reserve matters is in time. You can only consider matters of landscape, layout, appearance and scale. To consider any other matters would result in challenge to the council. You can only consider those 4 things as part of this application.
Thank you. Any other questions from members? Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I must say is that I agree totally with what Councillor Webb is saying about the safety for pedestrians. It's been this crossing's been recognised as possibly a danger for crossing. As I understand it, it's been like that for decades. I think it's a little bit disingenuous of the officers of Road and Rail and the Mid-Norfolk Railway and NCC to recognise this and not do anything about it and believe it's the responsibility of a nearby development, which I can't agree with. That's my statement, not a question. Thank you for indulging me, Chairman.
Councillor Bambridge, please.
Well, yes, I'm sorry to disagree with my colleague, but I think the addition just the other side of the railway line of 200 plus houses does materially alter everything. And whilst I accept what Rebecca has said, can I ask our legal eagle present whether in fact there is any legal way this matter can be re-raised? Because I mean, to me, sitting here today, it is fundamental that we're placing these people in a difficult situation. Two answers to it. One, a second footpath over the line, so we've got one both sides of the line, or two, we install two pedestrian crossings, one north of the line and one south of the line.
I'm afraid I can't add anything to what Rebecca has said.
Yeah.
She's absolutely correct, but I do understand why you're asking for confirmation.
And just to say, your guidance on this issue should come from Highways. Okay, they've given you the guidance. Councillor Kybird, please.
What are the provisions for future maintenance of the multi-use games area?
The Section 106, which isn't, that's part of the Section 106, which isn't for discharge today, sets out that there's a tiered system, so the open space will be offered to the local authority in the first instance, and then to the town and parish council, and in the final instance we'd seek details of a management and maintenance company, and there is a sum of monies that will be transferred to any one of those parties who are taking on the open space, and that will be done through discharge clause in the Section 106 agreement.
Okay, thank you. Mr Legroich, I think you want to come back on an issue which you couldn't be challenged.
Yeah, just a very quick one on a point made by Councillor Banbridge in relation to the crossing point. There are, as part of the off-site highways works approval process going through with Norfolk County Council at the moment, 2 points of crossing, one either side of the railway crossing line. So they are built into that permission.
There we go. That's answered that. Any further questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much. So on this item for Dereham, 3PL 2022-1050, your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? And those against? And abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay, thank you. This item is approved. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's almost 11 o'clock. We'll break till 10 past, so you can grab yourself a quick coffee. And then we will continue with item at Thompson. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're all back in the room. Yes, we are. Okay, so this is item 3PL 2023-0177 at Thompson. I've got, I hope, Councillor Jean Kay, who's the chairman of the Thompson Parish Council. Got to get that right. And Councillor Philip Cowan, who's the ward rep. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Naomi Minto, who will do the presentation on this item.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application seeks approval for the reserved matters following outline planning permission for a proposed new dwelling. The outline was approved in July 2022. All matters were reserved at outline stage, and the current application seeks approval for the access design, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. So the application is in Thompson and it's at land adjacent to the Farriers Tottington Road. This is the location plan. The site measures approximately 0.03 hectares and is located on land north of Farriers Tottington Road. It's located between existing residential development, north and south, which follows a linear pattern along Tottington Road. The site is located within the defined settlement boundary for Thompson. To the east is a public highway with designated open space beyond, and to the west is agricultural land. This is the site in the wider area. You can see much of the development is linear pattern. These are the indicative plans which were submitted at outline stage. It was an all matters reserved application, and the indicative plans show how the site could be laid out. This is the initial plan submission that was submitted as part of the reserved matters application. You can see it's 1.5 story with quite a high-pitched roof. There were objections from the parish council regarding the appearance, the design and the appearance of this dwelling. The objection related to window frames and roof tiles being black and the use of white render. The applicant has worked with us and they have changed the roof tiles to be in line with existing residential development, and they've also changed the render to be cream. Other concerns that were raised by the parish council include no details of how sewage and wastewater would be dealt with. This was considered at the outline stage, and the applicant confirmed that the development would be dealt with via septic tank. This has been conditioned as part of this application. Other concerns that were raised regarding landscaping, and it was noted that the garden is smaller than those given in the previous application. That is correct. However, the previous application was outlined with all matters reserved, and the plan submitted was indicative, and the layout is considered as part of this application. And whilst the amenity space is smaller, there is public open space directly opposite the site. In terms of the layout, the concerns that were raised included the parking for 2 cars at the front of the property, and it would leave virtually no space for front garden, as in the case with other properties on that stretch of Tottington Road. Since these plans have been submitted, you can see there the dwelling is in line with the building line. However, the revised submission, which I've just flicked the slide to, the dwelling is set further back on the site, which provides more space to the front for parking and some garden area. And we have also included a landscaping condition with the reserved matters application. Another concern that was raised by the parish council was the approval for a 1.5 story house, and they have said it appears larger than that previously agreed, and it remains unclear whether the first floor will be of similar dimensions to the ground floor, making a full 2-story house. And they also commented that the new property was quite close to the existing property to the north where there was a ground floor window, and it had the potential to block out the natural light to the neighbour's window. And the revised submission that they submitted, they've moved the dwelling back so it's away from that ground floor window on the neighbouring property. You can see it there on the plans, it's been annotated. And so that should allow for natural light to go into their window. And also, although there's less amenity space, you have the park opposite. So the other query they had was the fact that the dwelling was larger than that shown at the indicative layout, but obviously that was all matters reserved. And the plan submitted was just to show how it could be laid out. So we feel that the applicant has worked with the council to address the parish council's comments in terms of design and character, and the revised submission is considered acceptable in planning terms, having regards to policy Com 1 and Gen 2 of the Breckland local plan. In terms of the impact on amenity, there was obviously the issue that was raised with regards to the neighbour's ground floor window, and this has been addressed through the revised plans, moving the dwelling back, and with the windows to the front and the rear and the side windows which are serving en-suites and bathrooms, those windows could be glazed to avoid any overlooking issues. In terms of parking provision and highway safety, no objection has been raised from the local highway authority, subject to conditions. In terms of ecology and GI RAMs, this was dealt with at the outline application and conditions were added then accordingly. And overall, the application is recommended for approval. I'm just going to run through some other slides with you. This is the street perspective that the applicant has submitted. The revised plans reduced the ridge height because we had raised concerns about the ridge height being quite high. So you can see in this street perspective that the ridge height has been reduced, and it shows the stepped approach in the street frontage appearance of those dwellings. And these are the site photos. This is a view northwest. Previously, there was a double garage and a shed on this site, which have now been cleared to make way for the development, and fencing has been put in place to the rear. And this is a view southwest along Tottington Road. You can see the existing development there along the road. And a view northeast along Tottington Road, and you can see the existing development there. You can see that ground floor window on the existing neighbouring property as well. And this is the park, which is opposite, which is public open space. And back to the location plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cohen, would you like to go first or last?
I'll go last, please, Chair.
Okay, fine. We've got Councillor Jean Kay, who's the Chairman of Thompson Parish Council. You have 3 minutes, please.
Right, thank you. Good morning, councillors. Thompson Parish Council had no objection to an appropriate house being built on the land next to farriers. In commenting on the earlier outline application, they asked for details of arrangements for foul water disposal to be included going forward. The property which has been brought forward for approval at this meeting is, however, materially different from that indicated in the outline proposal. Dwelling in the current application appears to be 2 stories high, particularly when you look at the layout of the first floor. Condition 4 to the approval of the outline application states that the details to be submitted for approval of reserved matters is to be a 1.5-storey dwelling only. This is to ensure a form of development which is compatible with adjacent property and in the interests of the residential and visual amenities of the locality in accordance with policies COMO 1, COMO 3 and GENO 2. The outline application had no garage, having space for car parking to the side of the house, whereas the current application includes a garage and parking for 2 cars in front of the house. The resultant dwelling has a footprint which is roughly 50% larger, is set back from those on either side, abutting the boundary on one side and allowing for a footpath only on the other side. Unlike neighbouring properties, there will still be little front garden. While the colour of the roof tiles has been changed since the outline application to now be red and the window frames to be anthracite, the black cladding to the rear of the property is unchanged. This is not in keeping with the neighbouring properties, the backs of all of these properties being visible from the nearby road. The only mention of drainage is in the outline application and relates only to surface water, which is to be removed via a soakaway. No mention is made of foul or grey water from the house. It is difficult to see how a PTP can be installed on this site. Building regulations require a PTP installation to have a separation of at least 7 metres from habitable space and 5 metres from any boundary. With the soakaway associated with it, 15 metres from any building. No part of the front or the rear gardens meet these criteria. Thompson Parish Council objects to the application being brought forward. It is significantly larger than the indicative property on the outline application on which the approval was previously agreed. Its siting on the plot and some of the materials proposed are out of keeping with the neighbouring properties. Additionally, there is no information as to how sewerage and grey water are to be handled. With a property of that size on a small plot, drainage arrangements are a key concern. On these grounds, we feel that the application should be rejected.
Thank you. Councillor Cowan, please. Again, 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's one of these classic conundrums, colleagues. Planning and building regulations matters are completely separate. And the original application that came forward was an outline application, and it gave an indicative layout, and you've seen many times what indicative layouts look like and what the final reserve matters application may look like, and they're fundamentally different on most occasions. The problem here that we have, and you will recall, I'm sure, that Thompson is a village which suffers from significant flooding issues. It has for many, many years, and it will continue to do so, given its location in Breckland. This particular plot was accepted by the parish council as being an infill, which could be developed, perhaps, and hence, as you've heard from the chairman, the parish council had no objections. But I really am concerned that we grant consent, whether it's in outline or in full, for a development that cannot take place because it will contravene environmental health matters such as building regulations. And in this case, a packaged treatment plant, for example, has to be a minimum of 7 metres from habitable rooms. This plot, front to back of the boundary to the property, is only about 6.5 metres. You need to be 5 metres from any boundary. This plot is only 12.5 metres wide. You need to be 5 metres from any hedges or trees, and you need to be 4 metres from any walls or buildings that happen to be in the plot as well. And then that's for the foul. That's without taking into consideration the surface water drainage, which has to go to a soakaway. There is no positive drainage in this village at all. Hence, there are concerns expressed about the scale of this development that is before you today. Now, I note that the proposed condition 6, precise details of foul water disposal, is listed on the papers before you. Prior to commencement, above the laying of foundations, precise details of the means of foul water disposal should be submitted to the planning authority, which we have then got to approve in writing. But I find it quite difficult when you take into consideration the binding rules agreements regarding drainage, how that can actually be accommodated on this particular plot. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, it's open to questions from members. Councillor Bambridge.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I heard from the parish council or the member for that area, I had written down this issue of treatment. The planning officer said, and I'm sure it was a slip of the tongue, septic tank. I'm sure we're not actually approving a septic tank in this location, but perhaps we can be clear on that. And if there is to be a treatment of some form of sewage on, I think what it says in this in the conditions before us to be approved, I think it should be approved by this committee.
Any further questions, Councillor Kybird?
The regulations are Environment Agency regulations, and they came into effect on the 16th of June 2015, and therefore I would suggest the condition must state the scheme is subject to Environment Agency approval.
Okay, any further questions? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go for the vote on this item. So at Thompson 3PL 2023-0177, your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? 1. Those against? 1, 2, 9. Okay, and from the floor, could I have your reasons for disagreeing with the officers and how we wish to proceed forward, please? Councillor Banbridge.
I voted against it because I'm not happy with condition, whichever number it was.
6.
6, with condition 6, and I would like to see more information on that before I approve this application.
That's reason to defer, not for refusal. I need a reason for refusal. Councillor Gilbert, you're going to have a stab.
Yeah, because the submitted plans do not align with the Environment Agency's requirements. If it doesn't, surely, if something doesn't align to statutory regulations, we can't approve it.
Please do. I'm reading top of page 141.
You can only make decisions in accordance with the Town and Country Planning Act. You cannot make decisions in accordance with somebody else's regulations. As previously set out, is the building control regulations, which deal with packaged treatment plants, and the Environment Agency have regulations regards to permits for those things. You can only make decisions in accordance with policies in your local plan, not other people's regulations. The conditions can be updated, members. They can be updated to require further details to be submitted and approved earlier in the application process. It is normal practice to condition these matters in our view, and you will often see these conditions on applications, but you cannot refuse planning permission on the grounds of someone else's regulations.
Okay, Councillor Kybird.
Can we have a legal opinion on imposing a tighter condition on the drainage, please?
As requested.
I said, can we have a legal opinion on imposing tighter conditions on the drainage?
Okay, we're just going to have a short and brief discussion behind me. I don't know if you wish me to sing or tell some jokes while we're waiting. I don't think it's advisable, but yeah, the microphone needs to go off. I think we understand where you're trying to go, but I'm not sure with them. I'm reading the top of page 141. Which is prior to commencement, any development above the laying of foundations, precise details of the means of foul water disposal shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Only such agreed system of work shall be used in connection with this approval. So it's got to be right, otherwise nothing gets built. That's how I read it, and that's where we were going forward with that. Whether yeah.
So can I put
well, we could end up with some footings that stay there for
update conditions
for life, which is
prior to commencement and a drainage, foul and drainage. Can I make a proposal, members, that you may or well, obviously you can vote on if you wish to. Given that I haven't heard a reason for refusing planning permission yet, but obviously it doesn't take away your decision to refuse planning permission if you can come up with a reason. But I think what I'm hearing is that the concerns are over the drainage strategy and that works are going to carry on site and there's going to be no acceptable drainage strategy. So my recommendation would be to update condition 6 to a prior to commencement condition, completely prior to commencement, so no works on site. So no work shall commence on site unless and until details of a foul and surface water drainage system have been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. That would mean we'd have to have an acceptable drainage strategy that would fit with the environmental permitting regulations. We would consult building regulations, and we would need that before they commence on site. That would prevent any development. In the event they can't come up with an acceptable drainage strategy because it doesn't meet building regulations or EA permitting, whatever route they go down, then that would mean they would have to start again with their planning permission. So that is my suggestion, to update condition 6. I can say it again if you want to, and that wouldn't change our recommendation as officers.
Okay. Well, as chairman, I'm going to agree that that it's acceptable as a proposal from my chief officer. So I'm sorry, Councillor Wilkinson.
I agree with that as well, Chairman.
Oh, sorry. No. Oh, are you on?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to propose that from the committee members, and second what you, now you've said it, I'll second your proposal.
Yeah.
Just ask the solicitor.
And of course, if you want to make that a proposed amendment more robust, you could request that consideration as to whether that condition is complied with should come back before you.
As I said earlier, yes.
So, accordingly, to answer the question that was put before me, I think by you, Councillor Bambridge, no, sorry, I can't see a reason for refusal based on drainage. But what we can propose is this, that if you like, means that before anything happens on site, you are going, as a committee, because it will come before you, you are going to be content that your concerns over drainage have been fully addressed.
My exact words.
There we go. Okay. So that put forward, which is the acceptance of planning permission with the adjustment to item 6 on your agenda, with precise details of foul water disposal. I'm asking you to agree with my chief officer and agree this item. Those in favour of agreement, please. And coming back to the oh, yeah, coming.
Discharge condition back to committee.
Yeah, okay. They wanted to see it. They want to see it. They want to see that they're happy.
They want to see that they're happy. Okay, yes. Yep. Well, we will bring that back to committee. I think that's a sort of more the feeling. Okay. Thanks very much. This is approved. Subject to that. Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on. We're now going to take our deferred item, which is at Rowden and Larling, and that's 3PL 2022-0013 and 3PL 2022-0014. I've got Mr. Rory Holbrook, who's the applicant, who's here to answer questions only. Mr. Holbrook? So if you'd like to come and sit on the right-hand side, please. Thank you. Anywhere there, sir, be fine.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll hand over to Barbara, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So there are two applications I'm going to present together. They're both on the same site at the Rory Holbrook site in Rydham, Larling Industrial Estate. And there was a supplementary, members will have seen that, because additional comments came in from the Parish Council. And you'll see from my report that these both applications were considered by committee previously in December 2022, but members decided to defer the applications because they wished to know the views of Highways on the new office proposal for parking. This information has now been received, so both applications were deferred previously because members wished to consider both applications together. So I will now go through both applications. So this is where the industrial estate is. That's the village of East Harling to the south, just for context. This is the site where the new office building will go. And you can see here that it's within the designated general employment area as designated in our local plan. So because it's in the designated employment area, the principle of the development is acceptable in policy terms because it complies with policy EC 03 of the local plan. So the proposal is for a new 2-storey office block you can see here to the right-hand side of the access. Offices are to be used by the staff of the Rory Holbrook business who already work on the site, and to provide for a consolidated office facility. Some of the staff already work in a porta cabin situated in the same place, and some already work in the hangar building to the rear. Parking spaces are provided to the rear alongside the industrial building. So I'll just take you through some pictures of the site. This is from the road. The site is on the right-hand side. This is the access going into the site, and you can see the new office will go on the left where those cars are parked. There's the porta cabin building, which will be removed. This is looking back out along the access. So the parking for the office will be just in the foreground of the picture. So previously, when it came to committee, the proposal was to put the office at the front of the site with parking to the side. Now the applicant has changed that, so the office will be at the side of the access with parking to the rear. So I think I've got... In terms of the appearance, the elevations are brick and cladding, which is considered to be acceptable and in keeping with the general industrial area. And the 2 stories provide office space on the bottom, with more office space and meeting rooms at the first floor. So the plan has been amended to leave the existing parking at the site frontage unaltered and provide for cycle spaces to the north of the building with 20 office staff members on site. There are 37 parking spaces provided to the rear. This is now satisfactory to the County Highway Authority, who were previously concerned that parking would be displaced to the highway. So ample parking is provided, and it's considered in accords with our local plan policies TR01 and TR02. Matters of ecology and drainage are considered acceptable in providing for net gain, and conditions require the detailed designs for both the fire and surface water drainage schemes. Lastly, the Parish Council concerns are acknowledged and addressed within the officer report. Both site lighting and operational hours are controlled by planning condition. Overall, the amendments and additional information comply with the requirements of the development plan, and this application for the office is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report. If I can now move on to the other application. Yeah. So this one is for the erection of 6 workshops for use as repair and servicing and maintenance of the haulage fleet of the Rory Holbrook fleet, and landscaping following demolition of the existing workshop to the rear of the site. This is the site. You can see the workshop existing there. And this is the proposed new workshop. Again, you can see it is within the employment allocation, so the principle is acceptable in policy terms. Some pictures again of the access coming in. This is the hangar building as existing. This is the rear of the site. You can see the hedge along the right-hand side. This is again to the east of the site, looking back towards the access road. That's the front of the site as existing. And that's the front of the hangar building as existing to be demolished. That's the western side of the site. So the development seeks the erection of 6 workshops with 12 bays for use as repair, servicing and maintenance of the fleet. These will replace the existing workshop and ancillary buildings which are in a state of disrepair. In terms of the scale of the building, it's not dissimilar to existing, and the design of materials is cladding and considered to be compatible with the industrial character of the area and accords with policy ECO3. And you can see how the building is divided there. There's existing sparse hedging to the rear boundary, which will be planted up to provide additional landscaping and enhancement in biodiversity net gain, and this is secured by condition. Yeah, this slide shows on-site parking and turning. So parking for the industrial units has been relocated because the office parking has been relocated. It's considered acceptable. 12 spaces are provided for employees. Highways have no objection to this, and in fact the new building allows for more space on the site in front for vehicles to manoeuvre. Also, because it's replacing an existing business, there's not considered to be any significant increase in vehicular movements to the site, as the business already operates from there. The heritage value of the structure, which is an old RAF hangar, has been assessed as part of the determination. It does not contribute to the significance of the wider area, thus its effect on the surrounding area is neutral. A structural engineer's report confirms that there is justification for demolition, and this is supported by the Historic Buildings Officer and Historic England, who have both raised no objections. A condition is proposed, however, to secure an appropriate level of recording prior to demolition. Full drainage schemes are required for both foul and surface water drainage, and it's considered that acceptable solutions can be achieved in line with policy ENV 09. In terms of residential amenity, concerns were raised by the Parish Council regarding the operating hours for the industrial unit being 5:30 in the morning to 8:30 at night. This is addressed in the officer report. Environmental Health have raised no objection and not proposed any conditions to control noise. I'm not aware of any complaints from the existing operations of the business, and it is, of course, within an existing wider industrial area. So that's considered acceptable. So the scheme overall does comply with the development plan and all other material considerations, and is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions in the officer report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. It's open to questions from members, and as I've started, Mr. Holbrook is here if you wish to ask any direct questions if you don't think the answer can be arrived from an officer. Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I ask the officer, did you just say, because I couldn't hear very well, that you've removed the conditions of the working hours?
Sorry, I didn't make that clear. I have retained those working hour conditions, so the 5:30 in the morning to 8:30 at night. I think, and Mr. Holbrook may be able to confirm this, but I think that's how the business currently operates, but that might be for Mr. Holbrook to address. Thank you.
I was just quoting the hours that had already been in the report, which was reduced, and subject to the work of this company, you know, restricted hours like that cannot operate, you know, with breakdowns, traffic movements and everything like that. So I'm pleased to see that they're not being kept to 8 or 6. Thank you.
Any other questions from members? No. Okay, fine. So with this item, we're going to have to take 2 votes with relations to 10A, 3PL 2022-0013, which is the office building. Your officer's recommendation on that is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? Unanimous, thank you very much. And 10B, which is 3PL 2022-0014, the workshop. Your officer's recommendation on that one is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? Okay, terrific. Councillor Plummer, did you abstain? Is that an abstention? No, I was against. Oh, sorry. I didn't see you the first time because Julie's head's in the way. Did you object to the first one? I do apologise. No. Oh, you didn't, but you are to this one. I do apologise. Okay, and 1 refusal. One for a refusal. Thank you. I've got your vote. Okay, thanks very much. This item is approved. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to planning application, our final one actually, Attleborough 3PL 2023-0624, which I've got Robert Morehouse, who's the applicant, and Mark Hutchings, who's the agent. I've got questions only. Is that both of you gentlemen or one wishing to speak? Just questions, both of you. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I'm hand over to Rebecca, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an application in Attleborough for a single-storey extension to existing sports hall and the creation of a vehicular and pedestrian access, which will be shown on the slides in a minute. So here is the location plan showing the existing Attleborough Leisure Centre. It's got the 2 bumps on the front of it in red on the plan, and the blue line is the school land, which is linked to the use of the sixth form centre, which I'll show you in a minute. Just to the south of the building is the Queen Square car park, residential car park, and then just to the sort of northwest of it is the cemetery. Here's just an aerial photography to show you aerial photo. Yeah. Okay. Aerial photo just to show you the cemetery, how it lies, the building in the context of the other buildings associated with the school, and the car park there to the south of the building. So this is the existing site plan, just showing you the existing sports hall just to the bottom of the building there, and just to the bottom of the red line there, and just to the north of the red line is the existing sixth form centre, and the proposals is to link the 2 together and improve the facilities as set out in the officer report. So here you can see the proposed extension. It's got lined hashed in the middle that just connects that sixth form centre and the proposed extension. And also just to the left-hand side of the screen, in between the cemetery to the west of the building, you can see the new proposed emergency and pedestrian access there. You'll note just from the bottom of the plan there are 3 car parking spaces cross-hatched in red for you there. Those car parking spaces are actually to be lost. That's to provide turning and access in the event an emergency vehicle was needing to park in that location. That prevents that emergency access being blocked by those emergency vehicles. So the proposed extension is single-storey. This is the existing elevations. It's proposed single-storey, so it will sit in between the existing leisure centre and the sixth form centre there. You can see that the development sits well with the character of the existing buildings. It will be largely hidden from view from the public vantage point of the Queen Square car park, being subordinate to the existing leisure centre building, but it also brings a more modern appearance to that central section, as well as providing, obviously, internally additional facilities to serve the town. Just on the bottom elevation, side elevation labelled at the bottom, it is relevant to note. Oh, I've got a pointer. That wasn't the note. the existing access arrangements. So in a minute you'll see some photos of the site. The access isn't very legible at the minute to the existing leisure centre. So the new materials, canopy, will make it a much more legible entrance. And the other matter to point out is the addition of the cycle parking, covered and secured directly to the frontage of the building. So if you're cycling to the site and using it by sustainable means, you'll be able to park under cover and leave your vehicles there. And that just there is the emergency access to the site. So the applicant has provided some visuals showing that improved entrance, that better legible improved entrance to the site, and also the cycle facilities. This is from within the site, so this is actually the single-story extension in the central part of the site. So again, you can see it be largely hidden from the public vantage point, but again, it introduced a more contemporary context to that area. Just to show you how the proposals will be laid out. So the point of the proposals is that they improve better facilities at the leisure centre for local people to use, as well as the school, which will include a fitness, I've lost my place, which will include fitness studio, spin studio, and better reception and changing facilities. And those are the bits marked in purple, green, and just in light pink to the bottom for you. So we've just got some images of the site. So here you can see the current entrance to the site. So that will obviously be improved as set out. And we're just panning round to the frontage of the building. You'll note from the officer report that the tree officer has no objections on the grounds that there's removal of one Leylandii tree, but no significant tree works. And you'll also note from the officer report that the Queen Square car park is in the conservation area, but the actual leisure centre itself sits outside the conservation area, but the trees themselves are in the conservation area and therefore protected anyway by their location in the conservation area, but there is no proposed works to significant trees. And just to the left-hand side of the screen there, you can see the cemetery in the distance, and you can see the gap, which is sufficient to provide the emergency access in the event that it is required. And that is only if there's an emergency on the playing field that needs to be attended to. Otherwise, that's why we're relocating those 3 car parking spaces elsewhere in the car park to provide provision there for emergency vehicles to stop. Again, just the frontage of the building looking back to the entrance. And just to show the gap that I was just explaining just a moment ago. Councillors, we're hearing this at committee today because the council have an interest in the site and we're supporting its development. There are no statutory objections to the application and no representations received despite the consultation that was held. You'll note from the officer report that Anglian Water have raised comments with regards to the drainage system, but they are satisfied that these could be dealt with directly with the applicant and via a condition on the permission, which is proposed within your paperwork for you. I've previously set out that the site is adjacent to the town centre boundary and also adjacent to the conservation area. It's not within it, it's adjacent to it. However, given that a lot of the building is hidden from view, proposed building is hidden from view, and these will actually result in improvements to the frontage of the building, the setting of the conservation area will actually be enhanced, and indeed there'll be no harm to that. With regards to amenity, we are adjacent to the town centre boundary where one would expect additional noise and movement at different times. However, the application has been supported with a noise assessment that has been assessed by an environmental health team that raised no objections. You'll note from the officer report that there's no impact on the amenity of nearby neighbouring properties, although they are quite separated from the application site from noise or use of the proposed extended facilities. You will note from the report that there is potential to have a minor impact in terms of increased noise on the cemetery, which is adjacent, but that would only happen in conditions where the windows were fully open. And therefore, on that basis, our environmental health team raised no objections to the application. And given the separation of the site from residential properties and the location and it being single storey, we have no concerns in residential amenity. The Highways Authority don't object, neither does the tree officer has set out, or our ecologist and contamination officer. And Anglia Water are satisfied that their comments can be suitably addressed by conditions. So on that basis, members, we have recommended this one for approval, subject to the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. It's open to questions from members. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a question to the applicants, and our officer may be able to add in there. Firstly, to say that I'm supportive of the application in Attleborough, because that's going to give additional benefits to the residents there, both health, well-being and mental health. So all as part of that, and that's one of our great corporate objectives in Breckland. It's not a requirement as part of the planning application, but I'm just interested whether there have been any calculations in the carbon offsetting in terms of the construction at all, and whether that falls within value for money in National Treasury guidelines. I've merely asked that out of interest, not to raise an objection. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't have that information to hand right now on that. Yeah, sorry about that, but yeah, we don't have the information to hand.
That's fine. Okay, any further questions? Sorry, Councillor Anscombe, please. I have to get it right.
Could I ask either of you, considering the population growth in Attleborough in the area, is there any consideration being given for the future in terms of scope to increase the capacity of the leisure centre by adding a second storey? Have you considered that?
No, that hasn't been considered.
They're all gone. Okay, anyone else wishing to ask? Councillor Wilkinson?
Yeah, can I just say for the new colleagues that obviously any future extensions or buildings has nothing to do with deciding on this application in front of us today.
That's fine. Unless it said yes, then that would have been completely alienated of that. Anyone else wishing to ask a question? No? Okay, thank you. So with reference to this one, Attleborough 3PL 2023-0624, your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. That's approved, gentlemen. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 12, applications determined by the Deputy Chief Executive. Page 156 to 174, that's for your information. And item 13, appeals summary, also for your information, on page 175. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call this meeting to a close. Okay, thank you. Councillor Plummer, I apologise for earlier. I didn't see your hand up or down, really. Were you okay with that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to explain to you and to colleagues that probably hangar is the most important building in Breckland. I didn't agree with it being demolished, but I didn't want to make a big fuss about it. 40 years ago, I was in a campaign to save the grey and white hangar at Hendon, which is the same kind of hangar. We've losing not just the hangar, we're now going to lose the control tower at Shibden. So I just want people to be aware why I was against it.
Okay.
Thank you.
But we had our historic buildings officer and everyone else.
Yeah, well, I'm not.
I'll let the factor, but didn't disagree with its demolition.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I appreciate your.
Yeah, just to let people know. Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you.